There we are.
Good evening. Just like that, we're back again.
Hey,
Welcome, guys.
thanks. Glad to
Got
be
a
here.
lot to, got a lot to unpack tonight, so thank you for coming in, and we're really excited to talk about this. So we got a lot of questions. A lot of people have been talking to us and asking us things. So I'm going to be like a conduit of questions asking. So it's not necessarily my view or my opinion, just things that people have brought to me that I want hopefully you guys to answer for us tonight. So thank you for doing this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having
Yeah.
us. I was actually getting some serious claustrophobia looking at the tunnel images in the
Oh,
intro.
good.
Are those yours, or is that under your property? Or
I wish.
Yeah.
It's not far off though, man. That's my basement's pretty close to that, and I joke, the dragons and things live down there. And
yeah,
I'll get some pics and send them to you sometime. It's pretty gnarly. Like, yeah, there's nothing good happens in my basement. There's no reason to go down there whatsoever,
I
ever.
gotta visit sometime. That sounds really cool.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I
yeah.
looked down the stairs, right? I don't remember if I went down there with you, but I'm pretty
Remember
sure I
that
looked down.
opening to Tales from the Crypt where they like wind down the stairs and they come up on the crypt keeper in the coffin? That's basically my cemetery or my cemetery. Freudian slip. That's my basement. Yeah.
Classic mistake, getting the cemetery and basement confused.
Well,
Yeah.
now we should probably check his
Plausible.
basement. Yeah, you never know.
I do have a third floor, so I mean, if you wanted to bury a body, it'd be pretty easy. So
Do you also have an oubliette? I need a friend with oubliette.
well, what's odd, man, is like there's a stone center, right? There's a big what they call a stone stack in the middle of the house, and sometimes in these old colonials, is to hold up the chimney. But I had somebody say to me, they go, well, that actually some of them are hollow, and it could be a room that people used to go into during Indian attack, and they burn the house down, so the house would fall down around them, and they could survive in this stone room in the center of the foundation. I don't know if that's true or not. It sounds plausible, but then somebody's like, no, they die of like smoke and things, but I don't know because smoke goes up. I wouldn't think so. I don't know, man. It's who knows?
You know who should know whether that's true is me, because I have a master's degree in American history, and I specialized in early Christian radical colonies and their contact with Native Americans. So like I actually should know that.
Okay.
And I don't.
Maybe you missed that class that day. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope my old advisor is not watching this interview.
Yeah, you have to hit him up. So we're not here to talk about my house and foundations of
True.
Native American, but yeah. So right off the bat, we want to talk about NFTs tonight. I'm going to ask the question that I always get, and Felix or Marcus can answer this: is what the heck is an NFT? So let one of you guys run with that.
Sure. So I think one perception to get out of the way immediately is that they're not necessarily just related to art. An NFT is just a completely verifiably unique digitization of anything. And that thing can be digital, like a piece of digital art, or it can be something that's physical that we want to represent uniquely digitally, like, for instance, the deed to your house or the title to your car. I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of weird that we go down to the DMV and you sign a bunch of pieces of paper, and then those pieces of paper are stored somewhere, but there's no real publicly accessible digital record of that. And that's kind of where NFTs come in, is that they are a publicly accessible, verifiably unique record of whatever you choose to make them a record of. And when we enter into the sort of the comic world, there's this idea of, well, I've got an NFT, but anyone can just right click, save the image, and
Right.
then they have the image, right?
Right.
Well, ultimately, in the current iteration, yeah, there's an argument for that. There's an argument that now I own the image, but a lot of people are more into NFTs because of the rights that actually owning that transaction, that piece of data on the blockchain. You could do all kinds of things with it. You can create a fan club. You can identify who your fans are. Absolutely. You can allow your fans to trade ownership of your comics digitally in a way that hasn't been possible previously. They're really ultimately all about ownership at a really high level. And as you kind of dig deeper, not just about ownership, but the permissions that ownership bestows on you. And it gives creators and anyone who wants to create a unique system where I know who's part of it and I want to dictate what they can do. Maybe if you have this comic NFT, you can walk up to this really cool horror show and tap your phone against this thing at the entry, and boom, that's your ticket in. Just because I owned that comic, that kind of stuff becomes possible.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, that's awesome. So someone else might ask, why are we seeing some of these other NFTs go for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars? What's the justification behind the price of those?
That style of NFT, in my opinion, is ultimately speculation on community value. It's less about the art, I think, than it is about participation in the community, being part of that in group. Because I mean, if you think about it, in high society, there are all kinds of in groups that are very like sitting around with a bunch of talking heads. What value is there to that? Well, because you can say that you're part of the group, because you can say you went to the Met Gala, and I think that's a lot of the value in those NFTs, is being able to say that you're part of this privileged in group, that there is an image of that. What you're doing in crypto, you're involved in the community, you're part of this early thing. And I think that's kind of what I was talking about with NFT permissions, because there's social value in the NFTs too. And that's really, I think, what people are buying into, is the social value of the NFTs just as much as the art.
Gotcha. Yep,
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah, I don't want to jump around too much here, but I know we probably have a lot of people watching that haven't watched us before, because we tweeted out we were going to talk about the project, and I just want to say I am terrible about keeping my mouth shut, and I had to for what people were asking what we were doing for the last like 3 months, and I just am like we're working on stuff, so now we can finally talk about this project. So I think we should probably do that up front here, so we can let some of these people watching early on here in on it. So Starborn NFT, obviously there's no secret now, we're all working on it together, among others. But Felix, I don't know if you want to give the rundown on what this brainchild is here.
Sure thing. Yeah. So Starborn NFT is a horror themed puzzle game. And by minting NFTs and solving real world puzzles, we generate money for charities. We've got a list of charities that we're interested in courting. And we're also interested in the prospect of having our community members vote on these charities. One of them that I think is particularly interesting is, I have a list over here because I tried and I couldn't memorize all these, but the Effective Altruism Fund is the most interesting one to me, because it's sort of a meta foundation that manages donations to charities on behalf of people who are suspicious that they might not have chosen a legitimate charity. What this foundation does is basically they take charitable donations, and then they have basically financial portfolio managers that invest in a variety of verified projects. So one of those is the Ocean Cleanup. A couple of them are Conservation Lands Foundation and the Wetlands Initiative. So these are environmental charities, which are particularly of interest to me. Then we also have other groups of charities too, like women's issues and girls' education, the Malala Fund, and Step Up. And we're adding a couple of other charities, like there's an Indigenous rights charity and a fund for young school-aged Native children living on reservations to take field trips outside of the reservation to go to museums and things like that. So the way that this project started was basically, I've been a horror author for most of my life, and it was only a few years ago, I think maybe 2 years ago, that I finally broke down and made time in my schedule to read some H.P. Lovecraft. And I'm not particularly interested in old horror, but Lovecraft, reading his work, completely scrambled my brains, and it changed the direction of my writing style and the direction of the next few books that I have in line to publish. He's actually had the most profound effect on my writing career out of anyone I've ever read. And so Starborn NFT is basically the artistic realization, and on Marcus's end, the technical realization of a dream that I had that was inspired by the H.P. Lovecraft short story Nyarlathotep, which is actually Marcus's Discord name, coincidentally. But so essentially, we have hired a group of artists, including you two,
Yay, thanks.
to come up with basically digital pieces of art that I've seen in my dreams and in my imagination. We've got 3 tiers of them. Do you want to scroll down to
Yeah,
the
sure.
hinting section? Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah. So the Starsworn on the left, the Prophets in the middle, and the Starborn on the right. The Starsworn here are basically human cultists who are interested in summoning some elder gods from beyond the universe. If you mouse over them, John, there's a special kind of Starsworn called a Chosen here, and this is basically an empowered Starsworn. He's a rare mint. The next one over, the Prophets. The story behind these guys is kind of that they are human members of the Starsworn cult that have gained access to the ancient writings of beings far beyond our comprehension. And these writings are buried in tomes underground and in various places throughout the world, ancient ruins, things like that. And upon reading these tomes, the Starsworn essentially go insane with forbidden knowledge, and they become these tortured demigods. So in the prophet image here, we've got this very Hellraiser-inspired Cenobite-looking creature with objects and instruments of torment sticking out of him. But he's also gained all kinds of interesting telekinetic powers. And if you hover over the prophets, then we get the heralds, which are the empowered version of those. It's basically a rare mint for the folks who try to mint a prophet. And then finally, the Starborn on the right side are sort of the equivalent of the lesser gods like Cthulhu in the Lovecraft mythos. These are ancient slumbering beings that are trapped in a death-like sleep. They are awakened only by members of the Starsworn cult through reading and reciting spells in those forbidden tomes I mentioned. These Starborn will emerge from the ocean or from the hills, the caves under mountains. They're older than the mountains, in fact. If you hover over this guy, you get an Elder Starborn. That's just another rare mint, variety of those guys to mint. But essentially, it is the ultimate goal of these 3 groups of eldritch creatures to eventually summon the first ones. And if you scroll down some more, you'll see one under Uncover Forbidden Secrets.
Boom.
Got a strange creature here. And if you scroll down some more, she's hanging out in some cosmic ocean. Down here at the bottom, the first ones, these are constellations that represent 4 ultimate gods that exist outside of our universe. And in fact, it mentions here that they lope from dimension to dimension, raining down chaos on every galaxy. So, it's a very positive and uplifting game.
Yeah.
But I do, I've always been fascinated by horror. I love Lovecraftian horror. It's also called cosmic horror. And that is essentially the idea that all of our fears and interests and even our religions are dwarfed in significance by the existence of these creatures from far beyond the stars. Hopefully, by getting other people interested in this game, we can generate some money, not just for our artists and for our tech team, and for my goal to retire as an author full time, but also for the charities that I'm personally interested in, other members of our team are interested in too. Everybody here has made a suggestion on who we should donate to. So we figure it's a win-win situation for everybody. Marcus, you want to talk a little bit about the prizes for players?
Sure. So I love touching on the lore here. I wanted to build out kind of the puzzle a little bit and a little bit of detail on how that's going to work. So one of the things that we wanted to do with this is when we're talking game, we're not really talking like this is not a play to earn game or a video game of any sort, but rather a game that the community engages with difficult clues, a difficult puzzle, and progressively works through that actually transfers into the real world. So there will be locations in the world that one will need to venture out to actually complete all of the steps of the puzzle and move it forward. The successive mints are part of that puzzle. So with the Starsworn mint, there will be a set of clues and a puzzle to complete. And once that puzzle is complete, a week afterwards, the next mint will open up. But those mints are contingent on the completion of those puzzles. And we've had some really great people work on those puzzles, everyone from mathematician to people who are in CS. So I'm really excited about how quickly the community can solve this. Excited to see you guys' brains work.
Right.
I'm on the back end of designing the puzzles. So the guy that edits my books and is a co-author of mine on one of my books, he is a physicist, and he is a tremendously intelligent person. I don't think I've ever met someone who impresses me so much with his knowledge of science and math. And this guy and I get together, and I give him like theme ideas, and he comes up with all the math behind it, because I can barely count on my own fingers and toes. Now, that's not to say that these puzzles are math puzzles. I don't want to turn anybody off who doesn't like math. It's rather that the rules of the puzzles, the underlying mechanics, are governed by mathematics and physics, but it's actually a pretty creative endeavor to solve them. And I think it's going to take artists and cryptographer enthusiasts and crypto investors and lovers of horror to come together as a community and solve these puzzles. So we're super excited about that. Marcus had this brilliant idea very recently to implement prizes, to integrate prizes into the puzzles themselves. So whenever our players finish the puzzles and provide proof that they have, this fires off a donation to one of the charities on our list, and it also provides prizes for the people that solved it and the community at large. So anyway, that's mostly the pitch of this. But I also just wanted to commend Marcus for his really impressive body of knowledge on the technical side. And you guys are amazing artists. I absolutely love what you've done. Do you want to tell us about the experience of creating this art?
I'll let Joel carry that one.
Yeah, sure. So we do have some other team members that are not here tonight, so I didn't do all the art, so I won't take all the credit. So we have some other creators. We had some, so basically what we had to do is kind of come up with a theme with multiple artists approaching this, so that it looked cohesive and that it tied together. So we decided that the best course of action was, my role was to handle a lot of the background type of art. Our other artist would do the character. Another one would do what we call the assets on the character, which is things like could be a staff, could be a bowl, a flask, the runes around the characters. So that way we're not, having different artists do the backgrounds, different artists do the characters. It actually worked out really well and better to my expectation than I thought it would, because I was concerned about the Starsworn looking different than the Prophet, looking different than the Starborn, other than their natural characteristics on it. Yeah. I think the art, when you look at all three, is very cohesive, and that was great. So everybody did a tremendous job. There was excellent communication throughout the project, which I think is key with any project, and everybody's been very receptive, and any challenges or help needed on hand. It's been a positive experience overall. It's been great.
I'm super stoked on what you said about a positive experience with the team. Every person that I talked to about this project and who ended up joining was such a high quality human being. Like everybody gets along in our Discord channels and Google Drive documents and our meetings. Most of us are friends in real life. Marcus and I actually met. Should we tell them how we met, Marcus?
Oh yeah.
Should we expose that to the world?
100%.
Old World of Warcraft friends from way back in the day. OG WoW players. So it's amazing the friendships that you can kindle online. And then I met Joel and John in a horror fan club online, which is great.
Yeah.
And
I think honestly, I think that's a cool story too. Really, I mean, you were one of our first ever guests on our podcast. I think like the third show or something like that. Because, like you mentioned, the horror group. I had read, one of your books, and I was like, we got to get this guy on. So I reached out to you, and I had mentioned to Joel, offline, like it would be really cool if we could adapt one of his books into comic or graphic novel, whatever. So then obviously we started chatting, and then when you came to us with this project, we were just like, hell yeah. Like this is this is out of left field, but this is obviously we're comic people, but we were 1,000% on board, and obviously it was the right choice. I mean, this thing's freaking awesome, and like you guys keep saying, everyone gets along. It's been such a great experience, and it's been 3 months now, and just time's flown.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, the amount of work required for this project was way more than I anticipated. I actually thought that this was going to be easy, and I get because there are a lot of NFT projects that come out where they just by looking at them, it looks, people often say about NFTs, they're like, they're so simple. The art is so silly, like, why would anybody pay $3,000 for this or whatever? But the stuff that you guys brought to the table seriously impresses me. I think, Joel, you did all the backgrounds in these images we're looking at, right?
Yeah, these three here, the backgrounds are primarily my doing. Added like wings to the Prophet Rare Mint, right? I think we did that one. The only one that's there. Yeah.
Yeah, and every day I'd wake up and some new art would be coming in, and I was just like, you have to understand, for an author, sorry, I have a skill for writing that does not translate into any other creative outlet. I don't have any way of expressing my characters aside from writing them on paper and describing them in English or whatever. But to see this stuff come alive is really a cowing experience. I truly love the art. So yeah, sorry, I don't mean to gush so much about you guys. Marcus did a lot of amazing stuff on the back end too. Moving all the tech around, standing up the candy machine, grabbing the marketers. Like it's been nuts. So.
Oh, this wouldn't be where it was if it wasn't for Marcus. Yeah. Some of the stuff that, initially was way over our heads, so you just ask him a question and it's like, yeah, boom, 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 here you go. And like, wow.
I was in a meeting with him last night and two of our engineers, and I was like clearly the dumbest person in the room by a wide margin. I was just nodding like, oh, okay, all right, this sounds good. But I didn't need to be there at all. And I think it was pretty evident. So I love it when I work on a team where I'm the dumbest guy on the team. That always puts me at a very high confidence level for that project. So, yeah.
One of my favorite quotes is, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
can't grow without being around people that just make you go, wow, I feel so dumb.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So take us through this. We've been running a banner that says it goes live on January 22nd. How does somebody get this? Like, I'm thinking of if my mom has no idea what crypto is, what NFT is, like, take us through the process of how someone acquires and gets involved with this project.
Okay, I want to let Marcus answer that, but I want to just make a brief warning here. I don't think anybody's mom should be,
No, I picked
I totally.
The person I figured would be the least likely, if she, because she has she's passed away, but if she were alive, she would have no clue about like emails or internet.
Of course, yeah.
Right. So,
I just want to make it clear that if this is your first time you've ever heard about NFTs, really do your research, because people can lose a lot of money in NFTs, and it is not something that you should just, as Marcus would say, ape into. You should really have a good feeling about the projects that you are investing in. But anyway, go ahead, Marcus.
I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. Kind of lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, sorry.
You start talking, it's just like a siren.
Yeah. How does somebody obtain one of these NFTs?
Oh, right. Well, first of all, I'm going to come out and say that clue locations are not walker friendly. So mom is straight out. Like,
Yeah.
don't take your walker there. It's not going to go well.
Right.
So first step is basically getting cryptocurrency, because you're going to need Solana or Sol to be able to mint these NFTs. And easiest option for people in the US is probably Coinbase. So you can go to coinbase.com, you sign up for an account, you deposit money from your bank account, and then you purchase it. Now, because we are doing this mint on chain, you will then need to download a wallet. And there are a number of different options for what wallets you can use. Probably the most user friendly is Phantom, Phantom. And so it's just like any other browser add-on. You install it and you set up a wallet, which really involves like creating a password and writing some like your key down on a piece of paper and saving it. And then it's just withdrawing the SOL that you've purchased from Coinbase by clicking the withdraw button and putting in the address of the wallet that you just created in Phantom. After you're done with that, it's just going to the website and clicking mint, and it goes straight to your wallet. There's nothing else you need to do. And there will be shortly guides in our Discord on how to go through that process. But it's not too arduous. If you're familiar with using something like PayPal and moving money from, your PayPal to someone else's PayPal, the process is very similar.
Yeah. Scroll down, John, so they can see. Is the mint buttons on there on this screen?
Oh, that was up top. But
Still up.
I was just showing the different phases here. But
Yeah, definitely.
yeah. So basically, and then we have a countdown right on the website, which is awesome. But when this goes live, correct me if I'm wrong, but there'll be a mint button, like right next to, right below this, right above this. Correct? Is that?
Yeah. So there will be likely two ways to get to the mint. First of all, we'll provide you a direct link in Discord. Highly recommend joining Discord. Keep up on the news, jam out with the community. And then there will also be a mint button here, I believe, below the image on this main page. So, and as kind of said before, the mint that's going live on the 22nd is the Starsworn. And with that are going to be a puzzle that will need to be solved before the Prophets Mint will be unlocked. So it's not that there's a date for the Prophets Mint. It is up to the community. How fast can you solve the puzzle?
Yeah. And that's one thing I'm really interested in, because, man, I got to tell you, these puzzles that Jeff and I made, they're nothing I could even approach by myself. I would need people like Marcus and you guys and maybe 30 other people helping me out in order to solve it. So my worry is either it takes too long for the community to solve them or immediately, So we've added a slight buffer in to release the profits a week after the Starsworn puzzle is solved, just to make sure we can ensure a smooth technical experience for the next tier.
Yeah. And
yeah,
I don't know what I was going to say. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I got a question. So I'm going to play like total, naive guy, ignorant guy here. Like, so what do we mean when we say mint? Like, what does that mean? What does that do? You hit mint. What happens from there?
Sure. So minting is analogous to buying, basically. I mean, if you think you go to the store, you hand someone money, they hand you an item. That's exactly what's happening when you mint. You hand the blockchain some money, and the blockchain hands you an NFT. And that NFT exists in your wallet. You can transfer it from your wallet to another Solana wallet. You can go to an NFT marketplace like Magic Eden, and you can sell it. Or, you can keep it, and there are going to be clues in those NFTs that are required to play the game. So our hope is that people will hang on to them, as I think they're really cool, whether it's a profile picture or personally, I'm going to get whatever I end up minting and I'm going to hang it up on my wall. It'll look cool as shit.
Nice.
Yeah. Didn't you order something from Joel too?
Oh yeah. I've got.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you must already have that. Yeah, I forgot about
That's a big poster. I think you got the big one, man. It's like 4 feet or something ridiculous.
Really?
Yeah, I can go. I can
Yeah,
go.
no,
I got
it's
the biggest one. Yeah, I can go full screen too if it pulls it up.
it's
So,
not small here.
I
Yeah.
can unshare this for a minute here too.
yeah, there we go.
Oh, cool. I was gonna pull out the poster. I got it right here.
Yeah, do it up.
It's basically the roadmap. It's the roadmap on the website.
Yeah, I'm really happy with it. It turned out great. Let me
Oh,
see
I'm
how much
glad.
light I
Yeah.
can actually get
I'll go full
here.
screen there.
Jeez, that's
Right.
wild.
That's legit.
Yeah.
That's really
Right.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
full guns on that one. That's awesome.
Maybe I'll, you know what, I might need an Elder Starborn from you, Joel. I'll talk with you about that later on.
We can
I would
make
love
that.
to have one of those looming over me in the dark while I sleep.
Yeah,
But,
I could do my hand painted phosphorescent work on it too, make it glow in the dark, which is even.
Oh
even
wow.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Some of the comics we did, the covers and things. We did some limited runs that would glow in the dark. It's pretty rad.
Just the
Fun.
eyes. So you wake up with this dark image, just a red glowing eyes staring at
Yeah.
you. It's perfect.
I
Yeah.
want to add something too to what Marcus was saying about what he hopes people will do with these NFTs. So we do have basically a stretch goal for this project, and that is initially when I wrote down all the ideas for this game, I had a lot more game mechanics in mind. And it turns out that it was just too expensive technically to get all of these working fast enough. But think about, like, if you've ever played Pokemon, for those of you who grew up in the mid to late 90s, with Pokemon, you can evolve your cards. With Magic the Gathering, you can cast spells that change your cards and things like that. I kind of think of this game as like a card game in a sense, or at least in the future, it might turn into one. And so I would love to expand the collection of monster types and have different interactions between them, maybe armor swapping or something like that. And these are options that will kind of go into an investigation into once if we meet those financial stretch goals. So yeah, keeping your NFTs might pay off in the future. You might be able to do something really cool with the next generation of Starborn. So
Yeah.
Marcus,
Speaking to the funding goal, I'm personally really hopeful that we hit that 75% of the mint filled on Starsworn, because if that happens, we're going to be able to have Livid Comics actually create, working with Troy, a comic about the Starborn story. And that, I think that's something really exciting. I just love to see a comic story come out of this. It's
Right.
Oh man, that'll be awesome. Yeah, we have to have that happen. So
I have a lot of ideas. Yeah, I've actually been like writing furiously. I'm even having, you guys probably won't like this because I'll be stepping on your toes, but I'm having ideas for like individual images within the comics, describing or depicting.
No, man, that's all about the comics. Like basically,
yeah.
The thought would be that you would write it in prose form or bullet points, however you want to do it, and then I would put it in script. But in a script, I'm basically doing that. I'm saying, hey, bird's eye view, worm's eye view, over the shoulder, stuff like that. So
Sounds cool.
Yeah, so that's cool.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. It's exciting. We'll have to wait and see. But that would certainly be like the height of my career to like be able to hold a comic book in my hand that all of us put together. That would be super cool. So
yeah, it is fun when the first book comes, like how it is with even with your novels and things, when it comes in the mail and you get that first press order in the box, man, you'll never experience that again. That first feeling of actually having the tangible book in your hand. It's
especially when they get it right. Yeah, when you don't have to go through a whole bunch of like different author copies to get everything worked out.
Yeah.
Moment
Marcus, we got to get this out of the way, man. We got to talk about some music because you're wearing a Nine Inch Nails
oh no
sweatshirt. Yeah, and I've talked extensively with Joel and John about my not so secret passion for prog rock and for Tool and Nine Inch Nails and things like that. So, what's your favorite album?
Probably With Teeth.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I also really like Year Zero, but some of Year Zero is a little too abstract for me.
Yeah. Year Zero is definitely my favorite album of theirs, followed closely by The Fragile. So
yeah, that's another great album. I mean, like honestly, like just like the first 15 years of Nine Inch Nails, you can't really miss. I mean, like, and then I don't know. I think recent Nine Inch Nails has gone a different direction, and I still like it, but not as much as I like their older stuff. But then Trent Reznor pivoted to movie soundtracks, and it's just like
Mm.
knocked it out of the park, like
Oh,
one
yeah.
after
Crushing
another.
his soundtracks are
Crushing
freaking
it,
awesome.
so.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man, the Gone Girl soundtrack. My wife and I watched that a little while ago, and it is truly unsettling. Like the entire movie is filled with Trent Reznor-ish sound, and he works with Atticus Ross on that, who also is a great ambient composer. So yeah, superstar team. I would love it if if there was ever a Stolen Tongues movie or an In the Devil's Dreams movie for them to do it.
There
Actually,
you go.
there may be a Stolen Tongues movie. We'll see.
Knock on
It
wood,
is-
yeah.
it is being scripted right now. So
Nice.
Well, are you getting in touch with Trent, or should I?
you go, yeah. If you know some people, go ahead and call him up.
Yeah.
Didn't he give away like towards the end, like his last 3 or 4 albums? It was basically on the
Charity,
website.
like, donation.
But
Yeah.
it was like a donation base. Like you just pay me whatever you think this is worth. And I
Yeah.
heard that he actually ended up making more than if he had charged like the standard whatever $14.99 album rate, because obviously there's some very prolific fans who are like, hey man, I love your work. Here's $1,000. Here's 10 grand, right? And it's kind of a revolutionary thing, like because obviously people who can't afford it or don't want to pay for it are going to get it anyway. So they just gave it away, and you end up making more doing that type of approach than if you just charge a flat rate for it. It's a really interesting concept.
That's actually leads into an interesting blockchain thing. More recent model of selling tokens for what's called an IEO, which is like a initial exchange offering, basically like the first time you can ever buy the token. And that's that you put money into the token, and as people decide they want to buy the token over the first 24 hours, the price adjusts based on how much money people have contributed. And then in the following 24 hours, you can say, well, the price that it settled on, I don't actually want to pay. I'm going to pull my money out and not buy this. And that causes the price to go down. So you get this, like that same kind of thing, like a public price discovery mechanism. And I'm excited to see that go to creators. So when you sell your comic and lots of people are buying it, kind of the price goes up with demand. And then if people are no longer willing to pay that, the price, goes back down to something that people are willing to pay, which leads to the system thing. I think for a lot of creators, and I mean, me personally, even working in my IT career, it's like hard to price your labor and like personally put the value of, like, I labored for like 6 months over this thing. It's my brainchild. Like this matters so much to me, but what's the actual value to other people? And so it creates this way for you could do it with a comic where people basically are able to decide what they want to pay. And maybe that ends up less fair for the artist than if they priced it themselves. But in the case that we just talked about with 9 Inch Nails, it actually ended up better because
it's a gamble. And other artists that are already financially well off will do things like that. I think Radiohead was the first one to do it with their album In Rainbows. I think they were the first one that did that. But that was like a big deal back then. But Marcus, you were saying that Reznor's music has kind of gone in a different direction recently. And you can definitely tell when he was, like the moment he got sober in his career.
Him and Eminem.
Yeah, both of them, right? And it's really great that they are sober. But it's hard to deny how good their music was when they were in a lot of pain, And I think it's that way for a lot of artists.
I thought he was going back. He was getting married and bought like the house that he almost killed himself in or something, and he was doing something like that. I heard some interview or story like towards the last couple albums, he was just basically had that low point in his life. It had come full circle because he was, going to go back and correct his mistakes in that house. Or something. I think he was just staying there with a friend. I don't know the whole story, but he basically went back and bought that property to live in after he got married with his wife. So
I think he bought the Tate house or rented it and lived in that house while recording The Downward Spiral or something. And that's like the house where all the celebrities were murdered, right? Or the one celebrity and her family. Charles Manson's people did that. I think that's the story. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
That is nuts. It's interesting what you have to go through and what you have to do to yourself to come up with some great art,
Yeah.
I don't know if I have the balls to do that.
I don't know if it's good or bad, but he was from like my ex-wife's neighborhood in Bay Village, Ohio. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But we used to drive by and she's like, oh yeah, that's Trent Reznor's house. Like, okay.
No shit.
Yeah.
I think I think
Yeah.
Maynard from Tool is also from Ohio and from a kind of a shitty background.
It's an
Yeah,
interesting,
well,
interesting
I
area, man. I could see it making artists because it's kind of not a lot going on. I mean, it's, even Cleveland
Yeah.
itself is kind of like, you think Cleveland would be this awesome, like, mecca of cool things. And I just remember walking downtown and it's like once business closes for the day, other than like going to Jacobs Field or something or the Rock Hall, I mean, there's really not a lot to do. So,
Yeah.
I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Iowa, and yeah, just place anyone there for long enough and you become tortured. I always joke that the Iowa state pastime is alcoholism, because it's like you ask anyone to go, it's like, hey, let's go fishing. All right, let's pick up some beers. It's like, hey, let's go mudding. Okay, let's go pick up some beers. Like every activity is paired with beer.
right.
That explains why you played so much WoW back in the day.
Yeah, despite everything, I didn't actually end up drinking until I was 21, and that's mostly got WoW to thank for that. So at least,
yeah.
And of course, Iowa, my mind immediately goes to guys from Slipknot, right? So if they're from Des Moines, so
true.
Yeah, I've actually, I had a friend who grew up in the same town as the guys from Slipknot, and his uncle was like friends with them. And
Wow.
there was one night I was up there and actually got to meet Corey Taylor. He was just like hanging out, having some beers with my buddy's uncle. So yeah,
that's awesome.
That's funny. Awesome, the last time we were talking about, last time I was talking to you guys, we were talking about Corey Taylor from Slipknot actually in that interview, and he's like an excellent spokesperson for men with mental illness and people who experience suicidality and suicidal ideation, stuff like that. Yeah, he's a cool dude. But and I remember some interviews. I used to be a huge Slipknot fan when I was a kid, and I saw some interviews with him where he talked about how maddeningly boring Iowa is and how it like drove him to write songs about losing your mind, So
we actually had sorry,
we got a lot of this.
We got some Corey Taylor stories, right? No, we had a horror director, Scott Hansen, on. He did a movie, Bad Candy. It's a Halloween anthology movie that came out a few months back, and Corey Taylor was in that movie, so he was talking about directing him in that and stuff. So that's cool. But
did he say he was a nice guy?
Yeah. He's awesome.
He's really Slipknot. I've said this in the last interview, so I won't say too much. But Slipknot got made fun of a lot when I was into them. Everybody was clowning on them, like they were not really part of the metal community. But now they like lead the metal community, and they are. Their most recent album is excellent. It was mixed by the same guy that did Tool's most recent album. What the hell is his name? Barisi, Joe Barisi. But yeah, super great band. Okay, go ahead, Marcus. Sorry.
Oh, well, I don't remember what I was originally going to say, but I should mention that artists, like musical artists, another area that NFTs offer something. There's a platform called Audius. And so in the traditional model, you have like Spotify, and they pay you like 0.003 cents per stream, and you're just stuck with that model. But if you make your album an NFT and upload those tracks to Audius, you can define within that NFT, basically say, I expect X much per play. And you're not dealing with a third party, you're dealing with everything on chain where it's all automatic. And it's, I think, really important to understand that if we're looking at where blockchain is now, it's probably like 1993 internet. Every web page is like static. There's like a dancing baby is the height of the internet. That's where we're at. I mean, and moreover, like the internet, as we think of it, is really only like 7 years old, maybe 8. I mean, that's when things like WordPress came around, when we had like a usable Amazon marketplace, when e-commerce really took off. But there's just like so much of it, and it permeates our lives so much that it's easy to get this perception. It's like, oh yeah, I mean, the internet's been around since the 90s. Yeah, but no one used it for anything meaningful until like 2005.
Right.
So it's blockchain isn't just like this thing that appeared out of nowhere. It's the culmination of like 60 years of technical progress and distributed systems and cryptography and all kinds of really advanced stuff. So when you're thinking about like, oh, you know, like where NFTs are now and like what's possible now, just think what was possible with, you know, 1993 internet. You know,
This
it
is
took us a while to imagine the possibilities. One of my favorite examples of this is early on the New York Times. They took their paper digital and they were like, all right, so we want to take our paper and we want to put it on a website. We want the same formatting. We want you to be able to click like here and it just pulls up the whole article with identical formatting, because they have an entire team that every week goes through and it's like, all right, this article here, we're going to make this image this big, you know, format and lay out the whole paper. And they just wanted to duplicate that online, but it doesn't really translate that way. And you get stuck in this thinking of, we've got this thing that exists and we want to translate into this new medium, but you start out by just duplicating it. We're going to do the same thing on a different medium. And that's kind of a little bit of the friction that we're hitting now, you know, like the people who are 16, 17, just starting to head into their college years and think about this kind of stuff. Those are really the people that I think are going to push forward innovation and coming up with fresh ideas with like, this is native to them. This has been their experience. And so they don't have that previous coloring of, you know, we've always designed the paper this way. Let's just put it online. They're the ones who come in and say, well, we've got this wonderful web medium. We can have, you know, infinite scroll and we can have images pop up and audio and videos and all this stuff that, you know, papers couldn't do. But it takes fresh minds. It takes people without that past, you know, constant clock of this has been the standard. So let's keep doing it in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's a great point you make there. Like all the people right now that are, you know, I don't want to throw ageism in here or anything, but you know, I mean, the people that are older than our generation don't want to touch NFTs. They're afraid to even go on a computer, half of them still. But you know, so literally, like we are like just that in between right now, where we're just, you know, the tip of the iceberg. Where me in 7th grade, you know, going to my grandparents' house to use their dial-up because I couldn't get internet where I lived. You know, it's we're at the very start of this journey. So
I remember one of my first experiences with like really getting into the internet started when I went over to my buddy's place at the trailer park and he played the Numa Numa video on his computer. And I was like, wow, this is the height of entertainment. I need this. And so he like wrote down the URL, but I was basically a kid then. Like I kind of knew what to do with the URL and like how to use browsers and so forth. But it's this moment that sticks out to me as something that everybody just knows now, that at that time was just like such a foreign concept. Like, what is an internet browser? Like, how do I use any of this information? You know, like to connect to the internet, I've got to like, my computer's going to scream at me for a while and then I can do stuff.
Mom picks up the phone, you lose your connection, right? The whole thing's done, right? Yeah. My experience was those old message boards. What were they? What was it? P2P, PSP? What was it? I don't know what those message boards were.
IRC is one of the originals.
Just going on there in like 95 and just like trolling with people and fucking around with them. That was my early experience with the
Well, you
internet.
guys talk about playing World of Warcraft. I guarantee you, if I didn't live in the woods, that I would have been obsessed with World of Warcraft. I couldn't go on.
God.
I didn't have PC gaming. I had like all the systems like PlayStation and well Sega and whatnot before that, but I couldn't play online games.
You were a wizard if you had a PC, man. That was like the thing.
Yeah.
If you're a PC game and you were next level, you were like the Neo Geo kids, and there was like PC was like the next level up. So
yeah, I barely escaped the jaws of that game, John. It might be good that you did not experience it, especially at the height of its popularity, because it was a fucking phenomenon when it first came out. And like I was at the time I was a teenager. I was working at a computer store, and somebody put it in my hand. I was like a kind of an FPS player. I was playing Battlefield 1942 and Doom 3 and stuff like that.
Sure.
And man, I took this game home. Somebody talked me into it. I can't remember how, but I took that game home and I logged in. And like Marcus was saying, you know, your interaction, your first interfacing with brand new technology. If you've never played an MMO before, have you?
No,
Oh, yeah.
No, I haven't.
It is insane. Like I remember I was probably 18 years old and I created a little elf character and I logged in to this giant forest and you could see like the mountains in the distance, and you could go to that mountain, you could walk through the forest to the mountain in the distance, climb the top of the mountain, and there would be a dude up there from Iowa who wanted to join you on a quest. I mean, it was like the most magical. I think that game might have had some subconscious influence on my own writing because it's super whimsical and has lots of forests in it and stuff. But yeah, Marcus, I had kind of like a stoner question for you when you were talking about blockchain a minute ago. You were talking about the existence of the modern internet, AWS, the introduction of JavaScript for to make pages interactive and things like that. So I'm sure you're already aware of this, but blockchain and DeFi and digital currency and decentralization, all these things were conversations that were occurring in the 1960s and 70s, I believe I've read. And that was roughly around the same time that people were, scientists were also hypothesizing about what an internet might look like. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the internet sprung out of some technological project that a bunch of scientists built to exchange scientific data across the United States. Is that right?
Yeah, it was originally a U.S. government project funded by DARPA.
Okay.
First generation of the internet was called ARPANET, and it was basically like a point-to-point connection between some academic universities and I think a couple government organizations.
Got it. So I'm eventually going to get to my question here. Sorry to set it up for so long, but your answer is either going to be super philosophical or super technical, and I'm not sure which to anticipate here. But if all those conversations were being held about blockchain tech at the same time as the development of the hypothesizing about the development of the internet, why was it that the internet came around first and not blockchain? Like, did we need internet tech to develop the way it did in order for blockchain to become realized technologically, or was it just that one of them had more interest than the other? Or
Sure. So I'll try and bridge the technical and philosophical here.
Sure.
So distributed systems are really complicated. A distributed system really just means like a bunch of servers spread out and interconnected that do things collectively rather than individually. With the early internet, we just figured out connect computer to other thing. I mean, like the absolute bare bones basics of networking two computers together were still being developed. And not only that, but connection speeds were incredibly slow. Like you couldn't, I'm sure everybody remembers on dial-up, like you pull up an image and it's like, like it takes forever to just like load this one picture.
I feel like every 13-year-old boy still remembers that.
I wasn't going to say it, but yeah.
Yeah. I can see a boob.
That's right.
The anticipation is what makes it right. And then there's also all kinds of cryptography research that had to be done on top of that. I mean, blockchains are secured by cryptography like most of our world. Without cryptography, we wouldn't have an internet. We would have a library that everybody could access. You couldn't enter personal information or credit card numbers. You couldn't buy anything online. Like none of that would exist without cryptography. Yeah. And blockchain is ultimately strongly based on those things that we've been developing for years and years now. And interestingly, if we're going to get a little bit philosophical here, it wasn't actually until I want to say the late 70s that we came up with the idea of consensus, which is just the simplest way to explain it is having two things at a distance agree on some fact. Like it doesn't matter what the fact is. In the case back then, it was electronics and airplanes. Like you're in the sky. If you fall out of the sky, you die. So it's really important to have that one sensor that says engine good, have a backup. But how do you have two sensors, one over here, know at exactly the same time, engine good, and be sure that both of them say engine good? That whole idea, which is referred to as the Byzantine generals problem, is necessary and had to be fleshed out a whole lot before it could be applied to blockchain. So short answer is we had the internet, we discovered how to connect two things together, but we needed to be able to push a whole bunch of data between those two things, which it took a long time to be able to do. And we needed to make sure that the things that were separated by distance could agree on the state of things. And we had no idea how to do that at the time.
That's really fascinating. Yeah, I have so much less to contribute about the technological aspect of this project and about blockchain at large. But I do want to say that, I came from a humanities background. I have 3 history degrees. I chose to leave the profession. I know. I'm proud of what I did, but I did regret it later on because my values changed as I grew older. I wanted things like a family and a house and stuff like that. So I switched, and I became a Java developer. And I wasn't bad as a Python and Java developer. I was laid off in the pandemic, but so my career has changed yet again. I'm still in tech, but my experience learning about computer science from from a humanities background, I can say that web tech and databases and distributed systems are very difficult to understand for a person who doesn't have your background. But blockchain technology truly looks like fucking alien tech that we discovered on Mars and brought back here. It feels so much more advanced than anything else that we have. And I think the people who read about it and have that same almost like emotional reaction to its complexity that I have are the people that later go on to build projects like ours. And also the people that become obsessed with investing in cryptocurrency because they become obsessed with the idea that blockchain and crypto and NFTs are actually going to rearrange entire global systems in the real world, like our economy, our banking system, which I hope actually completely fucking collapses. Not the economy, the banking system.
You might get your wish.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah, I mean, Joel, I know you're thinking about negative interest rates coming up, and I truly think that blockchain, after we get through all of the hiccups of the early 90s that we're currently experiencing in this domain of tech, I think it's going to benefit humanity in a tremendous way. Our project, Starborn NFT, is a way that we can contribute to the world at a technological level that I understand, and that I think a lot of people can understand. A lot of people who are not super tech savvy. You play our game, you generate funds for real world charities. We take that money, we let the users or the players come to a consensus on which charity is worthy of receiving the money that we've generated through having fun. And then the money is given to those charities, and proof is posted on our social media. And hopefully we can get the charity to confirm to, in most cases, in my experience, they are willing to publicly make that confirmation. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so sorry, John, I know you looked like you wanted to say something a second ago, and I kind of went on there.
No. Actually, I'm glad it was a good segue bringing it back to Starborn, because it wasn't in the chat room on YouTube or anything, but in the Discord room. By the way, we're getting people joining Discord already, which is awesome.
Excellent.
Yeah, someone asked if we had set minting prices yet. So I know it's up on the site. I can share it there, but I don't know if you wanted to chat about that too. We didn't talk about that. So
yeah, let me just hop right in there real quick, John. So I wanted to ask too, Marcus, I guess, we mentioned Solana being the currency that we're using. Everybody's, obviously familiar with Bitcoin. Why did we choose Solana for this versus something like Bitcoin that's more broadly known?
It's a good question. Yeah.
Bitcoin isn't technically capable of supporting smart contracts, so like you can't have a Bitcoin NFT. So that rules out Bitcoin. We didn't use Ethereum because right now, if you want to mint an NFT on Ethereum, just like not the cost of the NFT, just the cost of basically the platform charging you a fee to do your transactions, like $200. And on Solana, that's like 0.000025 cents. So just from like I don't want to go spend 200 extra bucks over what something costs just to get it. And the second is that it's fast. On Ethereum, I have to wait maybe 8 to 15 minutes for my NFT. On Solana, I have to wait less than 2 seconds.
Wow.
Marcus, could you take like your best stab at a really high level, simple explanation for why it's so much more expensive to do transactions on the Ethereum blockchain as opposed to the Solana blockchain?
I'm not going to try and tackle that on stream because it's going to get into a
Okay.
20-minute conversation.
Yeah.
Part two.
Let's say, what about this? Correct me if I'm wrong, but the algorithm required to process those transactions on the Ethereum blockchain requires way more computational power than algorithms on the Solana blockchain, right?
Yeah, so I'll give the really short version here. Blockchains are ultimately systems based on game theory. And that basically means that, like, as a human being, I can be trusted to generally do things that are in my own best interest because I'm human. And I can generally be trusted not to do things that are in my worst interest with no potential gain. And it's systems based on that logic. Now, the way that this is implemented on a blockchain is that in order to do something, I have to have something at stake, basically. And Ethereum does this by basically saying, well, we're going to make you do a whole bunch of work in order to do this thing, send a transaction. And that work is just a stake. It's just so you have skin in the game. So it doesn't get you anything besides permission to do that transaction. And if you try and do something malicious, all of that work is wasted. So that's your skin in the game, is doing a bunch of pointless computational work, hugely wasteful. There's no reason for it at a technical level. And that's really the innovation on Solana, is that basically instead of saying, and it's not just Solana, it's any proof of stake chain, which is the underlying algorithm, is instead we're just going to say that you have to put up a whole bunch of money as collateral. And if you do something naughty, we're going to remove your collateral. We're going to take your money. It rather than work representing value, it's just like actual value representing value. And because of that, we don't need to do all of that wasteful work instead of having collateral.
And this is the difference between proof of work and proof of stake protocols.
Yeah. There are other innovations for Solana that make it more performant than other proof of stake chains, but that's technical nitty gritty that I'm not going to get into.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for the explanation. Yeah, it's and for the people who maybe don't understand even what you're talking about with work and putting up money, we're talking about the blockchain as like a distributed system that is powered by people's physical computers all over the world, and also server farms run by Elon Musk. And so the computer, if you're doing Solana or Ethereum transactions, your computer has to do a whole bunch of work to get that skin in the game. Whereas if your computer is doing Solana transactions, and the node that you belong to has to put up a bunch of money in order to avoid having to do that work. So that's how they get their skin in the Solana game. Make sense? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. So the question, and I don't even know if the person in the Discord is watching live or not, but if they are, so we do have right on the website on starborn.io, when you go down to this section of the page here where we show the different phases, you can see,
yes, the prices.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
So, let's cut it here.
Yeah.
Well, so for Starborn, which is the first release on the 22nd of January, there we're going to be doing those at 2 Sol with the puzzle there. So to get one of those minted, that's what that would cost there. So if you're watching, here you go. I don't know if you want to say any more to that, but pretty straightforward it seems. So
yeah, Marcus, you want to take it away, or you want me?
Well, what detail are we flavoring this with?
Well, I think the discussion about why we decided to choose incrementally smaller amounts for the rarer tiers, and that's because we didn't want participants to be incentivized to unlock these mints, solve the puzzles by unlocking the next tiers because they had extra money to spend. We wanted to do it because it's a fun thing to do. So the rarity of the profits in the Starborn come from the number of them as opposed to their floor price. We want them to be as affordable as possible, but still also be able to compensate the people who built the project. So we've decided to make each successive tier rarer, but also cheaper. And hopefully that will benefit people in the end who do decide to mint them. And hopefully the discounts will act as a reward for the people who are the most tenacious in solving the puzzles and working with the community. This is an idea that I had basically to incentivize the community to work together, as opposed to break off into factions and compete with each other. So
awesome. So I don't mean to put you on the spot, Felix, if you don't have, I know we have this in our documents, when we're, actually going through like a meeting or whatnot, but so for example, with the Starborn, there's only 666 of those total.
Yeah.
And we talk about, the potential to get the rares, the Elder Starborns. So how rare are we going to be talking there with those specifically? Because obviously Starborn alone is much more rare than the other two. But then you're talking, the Elder Starborns, which are going to be, ultra rare. So, do you recall off the top of your head, like what percentage of those would be the Elders?
Yeah, so I think Marcus knows all the numbers exactly, but I think we're doing about 7%. You've got about a 7% chance to mint a Chosen, which is the rare Starsworn, 7% chance to mint a Herald, which is the rare Prophet, and a 7% chance to mint the Elder Starborn. And so for the Elder Starborns, it's going to be something like 46 of them are gonna be the Elder Starborns. And in my personal opinion, those ones look coolest. Although I do love the cultists with their Cthulhu, like, their tentacle masks, and the prophets with their crazy ass Cenobite piercings and all the body horror and stuff. Yeah, I'd be excited about any one of these, but so for those of you who are interested in scooping one of these up, when you go to hit that mint button, you might not get a Starsworn, you might get a Chosen. He or she, we've got two sexes to each one of these. Actually, not for the first two, not for the Starborn. But you might end up with the rare mint, which is pretty cool looking. They're very glowy. They have, we try to depict them as like empowered, specially selected versions of these creatures, chosen firsthand by the first ones to lead the cults. So
yeah, and also you might find some crazy rare assets tossed in there too. So
yes,
keep a lookout for.
I love the colorful mushrooms. Those are my favorite assets. Also, I do think, Joel, we've got my cat Odin in there.
Yeah. That's one. It's super rare, right? She, it was a she, right, or was it a boy?
It was a boy.
So I think he's like the most rare, right? I think we did that as
whoever
like
ends up with Odin
or something crazy that you can get Odin to show up on the shoulder of one of the Starsworn, I think, right?
Yeah, you know what? If somebody gets that, I hope they email me because I might buy it from them.
Right. Well, it's a good segue because one thing I wanted to talk about, obviously John and I are in the finance world, is just talking about, obviously some people are going into NFTs as an investment standpoint. So I wanted to ask, a lot of times people say, like, what makes this image worth more than this other image? So maybe Marcus can talk to that a little bit and define, why would somebody pay $2 million for this one, but only $200,000 on like Bored Apes for that one? Like, is there what's going on there?
Well, it circles back to that social value thing. Those communities, it's a lot of like, if you own a Bored Ape, for instance, there are like literal parties that they hold that are exclusive to people who own Bored Apes. Like, we're talking about like, if I'm remembering, there was like actually a yacht at one of them. And I mean, other NFT communities have done like similar things where you have these massive in-person parties exclusive to people who hold it. So it's that social club thing. As for art, I mean, like what makes I'm blanking here, but like what makes an old piece of art worth $50 million? Versus another old piece of art that's $1 million. I mean, they're both, like, let's say from 1790 or whatever, and they're both used, like oil paints. Why is there such a big difference?
Right.
And I think that primarily it's because of the social value of that artist's name, right? Like everyone has decided that, Edgar Allan Poe was a fantastic poet, and so his writings have a lot of value. And my Huskies has something to say about that too.
Edgar Allan Poe.
Poe fan. Yeah.
Eighth member of the project. Yeah, Marcus. It's really interesting that you bring up the analogy about the oil paintings because NFTs are the first time I think that that art has a prospective increase in potential value based on things other than just namesake. So, for example, your NFT, maybe in our case, your NFT could be used to get you into the next round of Starborn mints, or to be used as part of a future trading card game. So they have potential value in the future that is not derived just from who made them, which separates them from the analogy that you made about your oil paintings. But it is interesting. I jokingly threw out money laundering too, but there is something interesting to be said about old art and the fact that we don't question its exchange too much,
or at all.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things here is like, what if there was why can't I think of any painters? Rembrandt.
Van Gogh.
Sure.
Rembrandt.
Van Gogh, Picasso.
Yeah, okay.
Salvador Dali,
Jeez.
my favorite.
Mental block. Salvador Dali. There you go. How do you know who owns a Salvador Dali? You don't. There's no club. Maybe there's a forum online somewhere. People peacock their Salvador Dali paintings, but but with NFTs there is that community, and if you own it 100 years down the road, someone's still going to be able to go back and look at every person who owns one of that collection of NFTs. And so it kind of leaves this road open for, even not your project. Like, Salvador Dali dies. He doesn't care what anyone's doing with his paintings. Let's just pretend that they're NFTs for a moment. Yeah. But 50 years later, someone's like, man, Salvador Dali meant a lot to me and inspired all of my art. And I know everyone who owns his artwork. So I'm going to send them a free copy of my latest painting as a tribute to Salvador Dali, to all of the people who previously owned it. That kind of thing is possible. And it means that, like this NFT that has XYZ functionality now, anyone can add on to that. Anyone can add their own application or group that just leverages the fact that people own these, and we know that.
That's interesting. Yeah. And I also wanted to add, to your point about like exclusivity of the communities in NFTs, like, for example, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, these, super rich people buying and selling these NFTs so that they can be part of like this very exclusive in-group. You can't come on my yacht. You can't. Well, I do think that serves an interesting purpose for some people, and no disrespect to that project, but I kind of have the opposite opinion about how I want our community to be at Starborn NFT, which is, it's more of an effort, a community effort, than a community itself. Your identity in our community doesn't derive from just your ownership of the NFT that we've produced, but also your participation in solving these puzzles that result in, beneficial activity with respect to charities, so donations or advertisement, giving to the Effective Altruism Fund, things like that. I want it to be an open community as opposed to a closed community. And one of the ways in which that will occur is that I don't expect there's too much overlap between people who invest in NFTs for fun and people who spend their long nights laboring over recent cryptography puzzles. And so I hope that there is outreach within our own community to people who are not part of the crypto space, who just love doing puzzles, and maybe those people will even be interested in joining us. But I've met really interesting cryptographers on Reddit. I've seen there's like Numberphile and Computerphile on YouTube who love doing stuff like that. And I'm hoping that this project could even be, if the puzzles are difficult enough, it could become a puzzle community unto itself, irrespective of the ownership of NFTs. So, for example, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Cicada. Do you know about them, Marcus?
Yeah.
Let me see here if I can. Cicada 3301. It's a nickname given to an alleged enigmatic organization that posted 3 sets of puzzles online between 2011 and 2014. Cicada was really interesting. They're one of the middle age internet's biggest mysteries. So these puzzles, these cryptographic puzzles appeared on the internet during 2011, 2014, super ridiculously hard to solve. Like only the world's best puzzle making geniuses could figure these out, and they had to work together as a group. And it generated interest among enthusiast, puzzle solvers. And I kind of fantasize that our project will kind of run the same course, except maybe at a lower level, because we did not solve these puzzles to be solved only by Matt Damon or Goodwill Hunting.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're going to be fun. And one of the inspirations for one of the puzzles is, well, I'm not giving away anything here because our puzzle doesn't work like his, but the very famous or infamous Zodiac killer. You remember this guy?
Yep.
Yeah.
He released 2 or 3 cryptographic puzzles in order to taunt investigators. This guy was some kind of psycho genius. And I think one of the 2 or 2 of the 3 puzzles were solved back in the 70s and 80s when he was an active killer. But the last puzzle was never ever solved, and it was all over the internet. You could see it everywhere. Nobody's been able to solve it until just 3 weeks ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was like just reading about it a couple of nights ago. I was like, what the fuck? So yeah, the Zodiac Killer's final puzzle was just solved by a group of, I think, 2 amateur cryptographers and 1 professional cryptographer, and like a mathematician. But it is absolutely fascinating.
Wasn't it supposed to reveal his actual identity? That's what I heard.
No, it's just a message that's like, I hope you're having fun trying to solve my puzzles.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah.
I thought that was supposed to be there.
All that time.
Final one was supposed to be like he's going to say who he was, and it was super cryptic. Yeah.
He said who he was not. So there was a famous phone call that occurred to like a TV station, a news station.
He's not Ted Cruz, is he?
No, yeah. Yeah. Have you seen the image of Ted Cruz with the alien? Have you seen that?
Oh, no. So. Yeah, I think I've seen it.
So it's a photo of Ted Cruz like kissing his wife on the cheek, and she's kind of like, ugh. And then below that is a comparative photo of Sigourney Weaver being kind of brushed up against by the alien. And she's like, ugh. But it's worth Googling. It's one of the pictures that always makes me fucking laugh every time I see it. But no, the killer said, like, I hope you've had a good time trying to solve my puzzle. I'm going to paradise soon. And I guess every person he killed, he considered like a slave to him in the afterlife. So he was insane. But he also said, I was not the guy who called in claiming to be me on this famous news broadcast a few months prior to the release of the puzzle. And you can watch that broadcast online. It's like, this dude confessing his crimes to these news anchors and taunting them and stuff. But anyway, I personally have not murdered anybody, and I don't think Marcus has either, except people who play the Horde. Or were we Horde, Marcus? I don't even remember now.
That hurts me, Troy.
Yeah, we were Horde, right? Like, I was an Alliance player for the first year of WoW, and then I switched over to Horde to meet you. But yeah, I'm a traitor. I don't think our puzzles are that difficult in Starborn NFT, but I do think they're super interesting, and I think people are going to have a lot of fun solving them. And Joel, are you having any fun creating them? Because I've asked you to kind of paint them out.
Yeah, I've been doing some other things in there that are we can talk offline about, like color choices and things that also have a certain meaning, right? So it's just me thinking about things that have nothing to actually do with the puzzle.
Awesome.
But they would if you thought it through. If you're like, oh shit, like that's why he put that color on that object, or right. Yeah, so there's some other things I've been doing there too.
I have to say, when we had the meeting, we were talking about the puzzle, and man, I felt so stupid. Like, you're just like people are gonna figure this out, and I'm like, I would be freaking clueless. I'd be sitting there like, what am I supposed to be looking at right now? But no, I mean, like to your point though, I mean, there's people out there that just saw the Zodiac, letter, right? I mean, they have the capability.
This won't require the intensive algorithmic computations that Zodiac's did. I mean, his was really, really complicated, but simple in its design. Like when you when you see how he did his puzzle, it's like, how could nobody have figured this out for 50 years? Like, this isn't that hard. Of course, I'm seeing the answer, right? And going in reverse. But our puzzles, yeah, if you showed it to me by myself, I would be like, there is no puzzle here.
Right.
There's nothing to be solved next, but there
My
are
kids
people
have been trying to figure it out, Felix. So my daughters have been watching me draw it. And
yeah.
they're like, what does that mean? Why is that there? So it's kind of fun.
Oh, you know what it reminds me of? It's like back when I played Resident Evil and I would get to one of the puzzle parts of the game and I'm like, where's the user guide or whatever that you buy at like GameStop for $20 because I'm stuck right now.
So my wife and I are huge Resident Evil fans, and we're currently playing Resident Evil Village, but we did play Resident Evil 2, the remake, like 30 times, and the remake of 3 like 5 times. But the original Resident Evil 2, the one that came out in 1998, I think is like the catalyst for what started me off as a horror author and enthusiast. And I don't think Starborn NFT would exist at all without that game. The puzzles in it. Yeah. And so the puzzles in those games are definitely a major influence on this puzzle. I don't want to give away too much about our puzzle or puzzles, but there are 3 of them. They're all different from each other. And although you and I would look at them and have no idea how to solve them, or maybe not even know that they were puzzles, in fact, but there are people like my buddy Jeff, who is helping me design them, that I'm afraid of, because they're going to look at these puzzles and be like, got it, like in 5 seconds or whatever. So, but we'll see.
Yeah, my brother will probably solve it. He was the guy that always knew like the ending of the mystery movie, like, halfway through. He's like, I got it. Like, and he'd figure it out. And I will say that if the first puzzle, the Starsworn puzzle, is solved quicker than I expect, I will make that next one super fucking hard. I promise I will get you guys back if you solve it too fast. Pace yourself, folks.
Yeah. So, because I still have control over the complexity of each puzzle subsequent to the Starsworn one. So, we'll see.
I wanted to make sure I get a finance question here about crypto. So obviously we're dealing with like record inflation and things like that, and there's always been this this concept, obviously, that crypto is supposed to be a hedge against inflation. Why are we currently seeing a decline in some of the crypto values during a time of record inflation?
Because it's a bunch of horse shit, and it's an economic system just like anything else in the world that's tied to the global economy.
Inextricably tied to the global economy currently.
Yeah,
inextricably.
So the short version here is essentially that it's an economically tied system, and anytime that you see a downturn in money markets, equities, bonds, and so forth, you're well, not so much bonds, but equities, you're going to see a decline in crypto, because really they're similar investment vehicles right now. And when we talk about protection against inflation, well, the U.S. government could just print dollars for the rest of infinity all day. You can't print more Bitcoin. There's 21 million Bitcoin. That's it. You can't inflate a system that has a hard cap on the currency. And really, when people are talking about anti-inflationary, they're just saying that I know there will always be X number of this asset, or I know that there is a set of rules that says this asset will always inflate at X% per year, rather than just leaving it to the whims of a bunch of 85-year-old men who may or may not vote in one direction or the other, causing your money under the bed to go one direction or the other. And we've seen how quickly you can go from, well, this isn't great inflation, to wheelbarrows full of cash to go buy chicken at the store. I mean, if you look at Venezuela's currency, or if we go way back to, the German mark, things can go really south really quickly. And so just having guaranteed codified barriers around that can't just be manipulated by individuals or a group of individuals is a hedge against inflation.
Yeah, and I just want to tack onto that also, Joel. The cryptocurrency domain of investment is treated as a very liquid piggy bank by investors who own assets in other classes, and also people who own a lot of debt. And so anytime there's an economic downturn, at least up until this point, crypto has also crashed because people will liquidate their cryptocurrency positions in order to pay off debts in the real world. And so a lot of crypto enthusiasts are hoping, including me, that the market eventually will divorce itself from the traditional global stock market. But I don't think some of them would crucify me for saying this, but I don't think that's happening anytime in the near future. And I do think as long as we have supply chain issues and, political strife and all the, various imminent wars between, China and its neighbors, I don't think we're going to see crypto skyrocketing while the dollar is collapsing for a very long time. And if it does, it's going to be. Now, Marcus might disagree with me. It looks like he's about to.
I'm about to disagree.
That
with
is my
you.
position. So,
in the crypto immediate view, because I think that crypto moves so quickly, you get into this like people have a week of attention span and think that everything's going to happen in 6 months, regardless of how complicated it is.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So when I say near view, I'm really talking like next 5-10 years. So there are a couple forces that probably need to be overcome. One is that all of the major stable coins in the market right now, like USDC, USDT, some others, are pegged to the US dollar. And so like you still have the same problem. Like if your USDC is inflating at 8%, the US dollar is inflating at 8%, like that, those two things are tied together. You just own a different form of the dollar. But with newer stable coins, and this is like an area of innovation and experimentation right now, you actually have crypto assets that back the value of the stable coin rather than, like cash and cash-like assets. And that then divorces that stable unit of value, cryptocurrency, from the ebbs and flows of inflation of our paper currency. And when we start rotating to stable coins that aren't tied to our traditional currencies, at that point, we will start to see more of a divorce from the traditional financial system. And the way that the US government is pushing right now is that they see stable coins as a way to extend the dominance of the US dollar. It's sort of like wavering in its status as a global reserve currency, which isn't great for us. As our economy kind of goes, like it becomes less of a desirable reserve currency. Why not the euro? Or, like there are other options. But if we can, as the US has done in the past, rush to be at the forefront of technical innovation on the blockchain side of things and say, hey, we're actually going to create a digital currency that represents the US dollar, officially sanction it, and you can go buy, like your milk and cookies in digital currency, instead of having this US dollar. Because really the US government's best case scenario is no one ever transacts in cash. If you go pay for something in cash, it's not traceable. And that's not something that the government wants at all. They want traceability. Right. And blockchains offer ultimate traceability. It is in their best interest. It is something they're actively pursuing. So those changes at a government level of adopting digital currencies as the primary form of transaction, and there being options that are not tied directly to the traditional financial system, will lead to crypto being a more stable, long-term sort of thing. And I mean, if you look at a chart of the S&P or NASDAQ and you go back, I mean, like there are huge swings. But if you look at the chart, if you pretend it's drawn on a wall and you stand up against the wall and you look at the line, all you see is it going up and to the right. You don't see those swings. And so that's always been the way that I've thought of this technology. It's a new financial market. If you get concerned about the, like month to month or year to year, it's just, it's not the way that most investors think of investments. I mean, if you're you talk to traditional investment,
man, I'm not allowed to talk about it because of the licensing issues, like in detail. But yeah, that's my everyday conversation with clients.
Yeah, well, no, we could talk about
exactly that.
You would say to somebody, you're a trader, not an investor, right?
Yeah.
If you're a trader, you're short term. You really do care about that small window, the up and down. Like if you pull back, it's a longer. Yeah.
But to Marcus's point, though, like probably 5 to 10 times a day, I'm talking to clients about exactly what you just said. If you looked at it on a line graph, it's there's the dips, but it's moved up and to the right over history, and it's never not done that. So like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I always joke with them. I say, do you really believe that this is the moment that the entire global economy is going to drive the ship right into the rocks? We have 120 years of this chart. Like Marcus said, do you think that this is the defining moment, that this is finally going to be the one where we land the ship into the shoreline? Things like that. Yeah.
Well,
One thing I would like to see is just common equities traded on the blockchains. It's a pain in the ass. If you sell a stock, you got to wait 2 days to get your money into cash. That's stupid. Or if you want to move money from this firm to that firm, it takes a week, 2 weeks, a month. Like that's asinine, in my opinion. I hope the blockchain will solve some of that problem. And I really could see there being no more need for the Monday through Friday, 9:30 to 4 stock exchange. Marcus wants to sell his stock in XYZ. I want to buy it. Here we are. Let's just get this thing done. It's on the blockchain. It records it. Done. See you. Bye. Out the door.
yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, if you talk about international money settlement, that's like a 7-day venture right now.
Yeah. Stupid.
And it's not just something that like I as a consumer want a better experience of sending my money. The banks and financial system absolutely want a better system, because that's 7 days of risk exposure for them.
Right.
Like you want to know that Bank B has the money that Bank A sent in like less than a second in a best case scenario, because then there's no, like effectively the digital version of check kiting possible. If there's an instant transaction, you remove all kinds of risk. So every party in the financial system is interested in the progression of this technology. I mean, do they have like different motivations and viewpoints? Yeah, absolutely. But over time, we'll come to some consensus. And the example I like to give on this is humans are notoriously short-sighted. I mean, think about the fact that we invented a car that would go 55 miles an hour, like 10, maybe 20 years prior to the invention of a seatbelt. I mean, no one thought this thing's going really fucking fast, and if it stops suddenly, I'm going to die, until 20 years after we created it. That's a big gap. And, same kind of thing here. Short-sightedness really can hurt you.
yeah. I wanted, well, we're at the 90-minute mark, and I know we talked about cutting it off there. I wanted to close up with Starborn, but I did have one quick question, because we do have a lot of indie comic people that watch our show. And we see in a lot of these groups that we're in with them, they're all trying to like dabble in NFTs with their comics, and people complaining that their stuff's not selling and this and that. Any quick tips, do's and don'ts, for someone out there? I mean, obviously influencers are pretty huge in marketing and all that, but any tips for someone that might say want to put their comic book on an NFT that might lead to a little bit of success?
I mean, my take is don't put your comic book on an NFT unless you have a reason to make it an NFT. Like, don't think of your comic book as something that you're just going to make it into an NFT. Think about how you can extend the interest of your comic with it being an NFT. Like, you can do things like say, hey, if you own this issue, we're going to give you a bonus issue every month. We don't need you on a subscriber list or anything. Just by owning the NFT, you have that capability. Or, like use it to create a members club. Or, and this is a sticky issue, and actually, I'm not going to mention that. But they're basically, think of all of the functional research, what NFTs actually mean, and think of the functionality you can add for your fans versus just, I want another way to sell my comic.
Yeah. And I think that honestly, I think 90% of them, that's it, right? It's just like, hey, I can make this. The NFT is the hot thing. I'm going to put my comic on it, as an NFT, and that's it. And they don't have anything else to it. They don't have anyone backing it. Like there's just nothing.
Yeah.
They just make it.
That only works for people who are already famous for their work.
Todd McFarlane. Yeah.
So for anybody who did watch this entire interview or discussion, one point I want to bring up is that for any NFT project you invest in, you should look into the team. And I think this discussion has really given any person who's interested in our project really good exposure to the kind of thinking that goes on in our team. So there's a lot of brain power here, and there's a lot of creative energy, and I do see us all getting along super well, working together very well every single day at every level of this project. I'm really proud of the team that we've assembled here, and the leadership that Marcus has given us, artistic direction that you guys have provided, Joel and John. And so, yeah, and I'm hoping that we are able to give confidence to potential investors just based on the meeting of minds here. So,
yeah. Last thing I'd add is if you haven't already, hop into our Discord. It's on our website. John, could you post a link to it in the chat?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you have questions about NFTs, even if you're, like not planning to be part of the project, pop into our Discord, check it out. It's people who are interested in it. And I love to have conversations about this technology. So feel free to shoot your questions at me and we can have that talk.
If you want to chat horror, also comic books with these guys. And if you love solving puzzles, you will get your chance. So.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. Have a good night. Mint goes live January 22nd. So good things are coming. Appreciate your time tonight, and appreciate anybody that's backing our project and continues to support us. So always grateful for all that. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks.